Halloween, the night he came home. The movie opens up with the iconic John Carpenter score that really sets the dark, spooky tone for the film. We then cut to Halloween night 1963, where we see a young Michael Myers brutally murder his sister in an upstairs bedroom. Now that's a way to start a movie there. Fast forward to October 30th, 1978. On a dark and stormy night, we see Dr. Loomis, played by the one and only iconic Donald Pleasence, and he's telling the nurse about his patient, the infamous Michael Myers.
He hasn't spoken a word in 15 years. Just trying to understand what we're dealing with here. Don't underestimate it.
Don't you think we could refer to it as him?
They pull up to the hospital, where they see that there has been a massive breakout, and tons of the patients are on the loose. When Dr. Loomis gets out to try to open the gate, the one and only Michael Myers jumps on top of the car, and after saying hello, he takes the car and drives off into the night.
He's gone from here. The evil is gone.
Cut to the next day, Halloween, where we meet Laurie Strode, played by the legendary Scream Queen herself, Jamie Lee Curtis. Her dad is the owner of Strode Realty, and he needs her to drop off a key to a house he's trying to sell. It turns out the house that he's trying to sell is actually the murder house itself, or what the local kids like to call the Spook House. This is where we also meet the young Tommy Doyle, one of the kids that Laurie babysits, and he totally believes in the so-called boogeyman.
Honey, Amos, that's a haunted house. He said awful stuff happened there once.
We then see a mysterious person watching as Laurie walks away. Now that is creepy as fuck. Over at the hospital, we see Loomis arguing with another doctor about Michael's escape when he sets out to stop the evil before he kills again.
Sam Haddonfield is 150 miles away from here. Now, for God's sakes, he can't drive a car.
He was doing very well last night. Maybe someone around here gave him lessons.
Laurie's in class just minding her own business when she looks out the window and sees this mysterious, weird man just staring at her from across the street. School's out, and the bullies are fucking with Tommy after class.
Get you's gonna get you. Boogeyman is coming. Leave me alone. He doesn't believe it.
Then, one of the little assholes runs straight into Michael's creepy ass. Talk about instant karma. And then he just kinda creepily follows Tommy. At a phone booth on the outskirts of Haddonfield, Dr. Loomis is trying to warn the local PD about Michael returning to Haddonfield to kill again.
I'm his doctor. You must be ready for him. If you don't, it's your funeral.
After Loomis leaves the telephone booth, he notices an abandoned truck down the path in front of him. And whenever he goes over there, he sees Michael's patient robe on the ground. So he knows that he must have been here, and he is definitely on his way to Haddonfield. Laurie and her friends are walking home after school when they notice that they're being followed by a strange car.
Hey, jerk! Speed kills!
Shit, probably shouldn't have done that.
You know, Annie, someday you're gonna get us all into deep trouble.
They're walking up to Annie's house when Laurie sees the guy from the car earlier just standing there on the sidewalk right in front of them.
Annie, look.
Look where?
Behind the bush.
But when they turn the corner, no one is there.
He was standing right there.
Oh, Lori. Scared another one away.
Spooky. Then, we get a jump scare.
Excuse me,
Oh,
Laurie.
Mr. Brackett, I'm sorry, Mr. Brackett.
Oh, I didn't mean to startle you. You know, it's Halloween. I guess everyone's entitled to one good scare, huh?
Lori returns home and looks out of the window, only to see the same creepo from earlier in her front yard just staring at her. Yeah, fuck that. Later on at the graveyard, Dr. Loomis and the groundskeeper find that one of the gravestones is missing. And would you guess whose?
Judith Myers. He came home.
Annie picks up Lori to bring her to her babysitting gig. Along the way, they toke a J, and Lori tells her about the man she saw in her backyard.
Saw somebody standing in Mr. Riddle's backyard. Probably Mr. Riddle. He's watching.
But they're quickly interrupted by Annie's father, Sheriff Brackett.
Hi, Annie. Laurie.
Good old Sheriff Brackett tells the girls that the local hardware store had a break-in.
All they took was some Halloween mask, rope, and a couple of knives.
Dr. Loomis shows up to warn Sheriff Brackett firsthand about Michael, where we get this epic scene here. Michael drove right behind him and he didn't notice. Dark. So after a bit of girl talk,
Well, you could ask Dick Baxter. He'd go out with you.
I'd rather go out with Ben Tramer.
Michael is still hot in pursuit of his targets. Both girls are babysitting right across the street from one another, but little do they know of the true evil that lurks in the shadows. Over at the Myers house, Dr. Loomis and Brackett do a little investigating when they find a dead dog that looks to have been partially eaten.
Man wouldn't do that. This isn't a man.
They venture upstairs, and as Loomis starts to recount the horrific events, jump scare! Dr. Loomis gives Brackett and us, the audience, a little backstory on Michael.
I met him 15 years ago. I was told there was nothing left.
Loomis then delivers some of the most iconic dialogue ever in this scene.
6-year-old child with this blank, pale, emotionless face and the blackest eyes, the devil's eyes. I realized that what was living behind that boy's eyes was purely and simply evil.
Tommy's getting bored of comics when he asks Lori about the boogeyman.
Lori, what's the boogeyman?
Lori then gets a phone call, and Tommy gets up and goes by one of the windows, and when he looks out, he sees the silhouette of a man on the house across the street. Oh shit! Is that the boogeyman?
Boogeyman's outside, look!
Tommy, there's nobody outside.
Annie spills something on her shirt and is about to go to the washroom alone when she hears a loud crash outside. The family dog goes to check it out and just ends up getting his neck broken. Brutal as fuck. Over the Doyle residence, Lori and Tommy are watching The Thing when Tommy starts to question her about the so-called boogeyman.
What about the boogeyman?
There's no such thing.
Richie said he was coming after me tonight.
You believe everything Richie tells you?
I saw the boogeyman.
But Lori gives Tommy her word that she ain't letting the boogeyman fuck with him on her watch.
The boogeyman can only come out on Halloween night, right?
Right.
Well, I'm here tonight. I'm not about to let anything happen to you.
Promise?
Promise.
Annie is trying to get her fuck on, so she asks Lori if she'll watch Lindsay for her while she goes to pick up her boyfriend Paul. And when she gets in the car to go pick old Paulie up, this happens. a shadow in the dark. Or maybe a shape? Tommy is looking across the street again, and this time he sees something even more horrific. Holy shit! The boogeyman is real!
Tommy, stop it! Now there's nobody out there. There's no boogeyman, and if you don't stop all this, I'm gonna have to turn off the TV and send you to bed.
Cut to the Myers house where the bullies from earlier are about to enter when Loomis scares the pants off their little punk asses.
Hey, Lonnie, get your ass away from there.
Sheriff Brackett comes up to tell Loomis that he may be off here and is basically out of his mind, but for some reason, he can't help but believe him.
Death has come to your little town, Sheriff. You can either ignore it or you can help me to stop it.
And then you got Linda and Bob. They'll just basically add to the body count later.
That's when we go upstairs to the first bedroom on the left. You got it?
Linda and Bob are about to get it on when Bob can't concentrate on clapping the cheeks because the phone won't stop ringing.
He's taking her
After like 4 or 5 pumps, Bob goes downstairs to get a couple of cold ones, but he just ends up getting nailed to the wall in one of my favorite horror movie kills of all time. The way he just looks at his work after he's done is truly disturbing. Such an iconic kill indeed. Upstairs, Michael shows off his killer ghost costume, but when Linda doesn't seem to care for it, he strangles the life out of her ass. Mikey is on a roll, huh? This is the point where Laurie starts to feel that something just isn't right here. Loomis is still lurking about when he sees his car. You know, the one that Michael stole in the beginning of the film, just parked down the street. No one is answering the phone at the Wallace house, so Laurie goes over to see what's going on and is met with a horrific discovery. After finding her friends dead and set up like some kind of twisted funhouse attraction, Michael comes out of the shadows and slices her arm, causing her to fall over the balcony, and the chase is on. We then get this extremely intense scene here where Laurie barely escapes the clutches of the masked maniac. Run, bitch! Run! She runs to the next door neighbor's house, but they think she's insane.
Can't you hear me? Oh, God!
And then she runs back over to Tommy's house, and we get this really intense scene where Michael is closing in on her.
Please! Tommy, hurry up! What is it? Go right upstairs, get Lindsay, lock the bedroom door. Do as I say! Hurry!
She finally gets inside and locks it the fuck down, but then realizes the window's open. From behind the couch, Michael attempts to stab her, and she stabs him right through the neck with a fucking giant sewing needle. Jam it. Well, that took care of him, right? Dr. Loomis is still patrolling out in the streets when the sheriff pulls up, and Dr. Loomis informs him that he found the car, and Michael is in fact in the area.
I found the car. He's here.
Where?
He's 3 blocks down. You go around the back of the houses. I'll watch the front. Go on!
Laurie then goes to console the children.
I'm not gonna gonna take a little walk.
What if it's the boogeyman? I'm scared.
There's nothing to be scared of.
When we see Michael is still alive and he's still coming at you.
Lock the door!
Laurie runs into the closet to hide for some reason, but thankfully she did, because we get one of the most iconic scenes in horror movie history, the closet scene. In a panic, she grabs a clothes hanger, unravels it, and jabs that son of a bitch into his right eye. Causing him to drop his blade, she picks it up and stabs him right in the chest with his own knife. She tells the kids to get the fuck out of there and head to the neighbor's house.
I want to go down the street to Mackenzie's house. I want you to tell them to call the police.
And just as before, Michael gets back up in this ultra creepy scene here. Behind you, Jamie! Look behind you!
Jamie, look behind you. Look behind you. Turn around.
Plot kicks in and Loomis shows up in the Nikola test and shoots him 6 times. Then we get the final epic dialogue.
What's the boogeyman?
As a matter of fact, it was.
Loomis looks out of the window down to the yard below to see Michael's body gone, meaning that he is still out there. I guess you can't kill the boogeyman after all. That's John Carpenter's Halloween, folks. This is definitely highly recommended. This is in my top 3 favorite horror movies of all time, with the other 2 being Night of the Living Dead and Frankenstein. This movie set the bar extremely high, and after it blew up the way it did, other slasher flicks were born, such as Friday the 13th, A Nightmare on Elm Street, and not to mention the overload of slasher flicks throughout the 80s. This movie truly inspired countless other films. It sort of developed the whole formula of the scary movie that we know of today. Best described by Randy in Scream.
Number 1, you can never have sex. Number 2, you can never drink or do drugs. Number 3, ever under any circumstances say, I'll be right back. Because you won't be back.
Friday the 13th literally ripped it off. It was so good.
I thought of this title some time ago called Friday the 13th.
And Sean called me up and said, Halloween is making incredible money at the box office, let's rip it off. That is keeping it real.
But then again, Halloween was inspired by Psycho, and you can feel the Hitchcock presence throughout the film. And on the topic of Psycho, Janet Leigh, the woman that gets killed in the epic shower scene, is none other than Jamie Lee Curtis's mom. So that further implores the Hitchcock influence. Don't get me wrong, there were slasher flicks before this, but they just didn't capture that magic or have the same kind of impact like Halloween did. Something about a guy in a mask who stalks babysitters was just what the doctor ordered, I guess. The performance by Jamie Lee Curtis as Laurie Strode is perfectly done. She just really made you root for her and had me fearing for her life towards the end there. Truly a legendary performance. Jamie Lee Curtis, folks. The Scream Queen. And the performance by Donald Pleasance as Dr. Loomis was extremely iconic and couldn't be matched. It was truly a legendary performance.
I realized that what was living behind that boy's eyes was purely and simply evil.
If we're talking about performances here, gotta talk about Michael Myers. The way he stalked Laurie, even down to the mask and jumpsuit, was creepy as fuck. The mystique of his character, you know, the shape, and not knowing what his motives are, the way he looks at his victims after he kills them, almost like an animal or something, was extremely unsettling. And just the fact that you really just don't know much about this madman with a mask makes it even scarier. And I can't go without mentioning the score. The fucking iconic music by John Carpenter that just sets the tone throughout the entire film. One of the most well-known horror film scores, up there with Jaws and Psycho. Just all around, a very monumental horror classic that everyone should see at least once.
Excuse me,
Oh,
Laurie.
Mr. Brackett, I'm sorry, Mr. Brackett.
You know, it's Halloween. I guess everyone's entitled to one good scare, huh?
So turn out the lights, lock your doors, bolt your windows, go grab your jack-o'-lantern, and check out the horror classic, Halloween. Remember, folks, you can't kill the boogeyman.